Good morning, people. Welcome back to another Saturday morning G and T. Priyesh, I'm going to leave you alone today, mate. What do you need after a G and T, Turk?
You need a P. How you getting on there, mate?
I'm getting on all right, boys. How you doing? Good week. The sun's been out. It was my daughter's birthday at the beginning of the week. So, yeah, it's been a great week, mate. Been a great week.
Yeah, things are seeming a bit more positive. As you can see, bottom right-hand corner, very special guest with us today. We've got Lee Fraser. Lee, we're going to get to you very shortly, mate. Yeah, where Turk's pointing. But before we do, Turk, this is my favourite part of the week, part of the show. This is my weekly Turk. This week, a video has been sent in by...
Whoa, wait a second. For the last few weeks, you've been having your up on me, right? I've had a picture sent in on you, right? So last week we was talking about the North London derby, how much of a big derby it is for Tottenham and Arsenal. Who do you support, Glenn?
Big Tottenham fan, mate.
Right. 2 seconds. How do you explain this, mate? Now, that is Glenn dressed up in his Arsenal gear from head to toe. So
how do I remove myself from this?
This is now live.
You look like you've been busted up. Someone's obviously busted you up to put you in that kit, mate.
Yeah, there's a story about that. To be honest, that I was really intoxicated. So one evening we played Killer Pool, and every time you missed a shot, you had to down a shot of Jack Daniels. My mate was doubling up the Jack Daniels. I missed. It must have been 12 shots, so I ended up having like 24 shots of Jack Daniels. So then I've gone for the last shot. I've shot and I've missed the ball and chucked the cue. Walked backwards to say, "Oh, for God's sake!" and fell through his doors and headbutted the floor. So,
But I want to thank Glenn's mates for sending that in, and that will now be internet history. So you and Harry Kane have got something in common.
Turk, you wait for next week, buddy.
Oh, mate, look forward to it.
Yeah, good timing as well with the North London derby result. So thank you very much, mate. Thank you. Pre, I'm going to leave this with you, mate. Would you like to introduce our very special guest?
Sure. So we have today one of the most intelligent men that I can now call, well, not now, he's been a good friend of mine since coming into the football industry about 5.5 years ago. We have Lee Fraser, who has a little black book and a computer that has all the information and stats that you need to find the best talents all around the globe. So Lee, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Pre. Carrying on through the pandemic, Cheers, lads, for having us on.
Thanks for coming on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Looking forward to it. See how we get on. I'm glad I get a chance to speak to people because it seems to be that long during this pandemic that we don't get a chance to speak to anybody. So yeah, thanks for having us on.
This is what this show started off as. I think we started off getting bored of speaking to brick walls and under 6-year-olds. So yeah, it was a case of sort of having a chat. But you've been pretty much locked up for a year, haven't you?
Yeah, northeast lockdown. So we went straight into lockdown, and then as it's kind of unlocked, we've still been in the tier process. So it's been really tough. Haven't had a kind of a big party with my mates for over a year. So it's long overdue, So fingers crossed we're getting to it this summer. We'll get back to it. And we're gonna have a beer. We'll all have a beer together,
Well, it's not like the Newcastle team are giving you any reason to be cheerful at the minute, is it?
No, I know. That's it. Well, you need a beer as well. The problem is, I'm sure after 12 months, I'll be a complete lightweight. I'll probably be home after a couple of hours.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, yeah, I mean, what we thought we'd do. I mean, can you give us a bit of background in regards to how you got into your line of work and what you kind of do, basically, Lee?
Yeah, for sure. So I started off in Middlesbrough in 1998, working as an analyst, as a performance analyst. It was really, I mean, back in those days, it was VHS videos. So it was, I was working on set pieces, analysing the set pieces and presenting that for. I used to share an office with Viv Anderson in a porter cabin at the training ground next door to Brian Robson. So did that. It took a long time to do any analysis. And after 18 months there was a role going at Newcastle. John Carver was a coach at the time, working with Mick Wadsworth and Sir Bobby Robson. Saw the value in analysis for the team. Again, was still working on VHS videotapes, but the chance for me to go to my hometown club, obviously tell by the accent as well, a majority. I just jumped at the chance and was there all the way through, really, from performance analysis. I had a 18 months sabbatical, really, when I wasn't there, under a couple of managers, and came back and started to work in recruitment probably about 2011, 2012. So working as an analyst, really still in its infancy then in terms of analysis of recruitment. So fighting fires and working out ways of how to work better, how to work smarter with all of the information that was coming in, and just kind of grew from there. And by the time I left in 2019, we had 3 lads there, 3 analysts working in recruitment, 3 young lads, was tasked with kind of training these guys, giving them the skill sets up, bringing them up to date with what they needed. So left that in place at Newcastle, and now trying to help others in the game. You know, we have a lot of people coming to me and say, well, we have a lot of data, we can purchase data, but what should we be doing with it? How can we aggregate it? So how do we bring the agent information, the scouting information, the performance information, how do we bring it all together? So I'm tasked with kind of helping agents and clubs at the moment. That's what I'm doing.
Lovely. Sounds great. Sounds really interesting, mate. And it's something that I'm assuming you're heavily interested in that side of the game as well, mate.
Oh, mate, yeah, of course. You know, like what he said with the talent ID spotlight, isn't it? The banner you're running under. Yeah, sorry, because I'm just going to say Lee Fraser. So yeah, Spotlight Talent ID. So go and
Spotlight
check that
ID.
out.
Yep.
Yeah, Spotlight ID. We'll put a link up for it for any agents or clubs that watch our show. Please go and check it out if you want to see what talent is out there. Talent from probably 16 upwards, or is it 18 upwards? Would you say now?
Yeah. So I think the when we're working with the young lads with trying to identify talent, then they've got to have a data point first and foremost for me to work with, particularly in the globe. But as the industry and companies are starting, more and more companies are producing information and data points on these 16-year-olds. So if they're in perhaps in their 18s and below, they're getting data points, which means that we can harvest that information. We can work with that and try and find the talent that'll suit the club or an agency to try and move their players on.
And there's been some real gems, haven't there, like Lee, that have been on your list that we've gone through in the past. And there's players that we shared with you when Switzerland was a market that we worked really strongly with. And we pointed out some players to you, and you pointed out some players to us that have gone on to have stellar careers playing Champions League, had 30-40 million pound moves afterwards, and really kicked on. So look, there's success where you stand, and you're very very good at what you do. So anyone out there that'll be interested in speaking to Lee about this, please get in contact with myself or Lee directly, and we'll have a chat together, no problem at all. But thinking about how you started off, and this is a conversation I've never really had with you, but I'm really interested in to know what it was like being at Middlesbrough. That was the year after they got to 2 cup finals, was it? And then got relegated. And they had the season with the white feather, Ravanelli, Emerson, Juninho, Marco Branco, all those guys were there. And they got relegated, and you went into the club when they were in the Championship, right? When they got relegated.
Yeah. So I think if I remember rightly, I was the season they got relegated, I was just getting introduced to that environment, probably the last 3 or 4 games. So it was it's a testing time for everybody. Just to be in and around there. And they got relegated, and that's when they kind of went into the role. So we had people like Paul Merson there. We had Andy Townsend. We had Gaza. these guys, the professional guys coming in there to help with it, with the championship. It was great. And, I'm not an ex-player at all, at any level, other than boys club and, things like that. But you think you know a little bit about football, and yeah, I know football because I watch a lot. And then you get to work in a club, and it's just, you know nothing about football until you start working in that environment. And something that stuck with me all the way through the years, you never stop learning in football. As a couple of years ago, for example, I went to Chicago for the MLS draft, and I'd never seen anything like that in football again. So there's always something that we're going to take at all levels of football. But just back to your question there, it was great for me. I kind of see the Middlesbrough as my YTS in football. There was a gentleman there who worked at Middlesbrough, John Pickering, who was a coach. He actually led the team out at one of the finals. He kind of sat down with me and kind of gave me the education in terms of what some of the terminology was, what it meant was, how to identify these instances on the video. Okay, so I could then provide examples back to Vivid and Brian. So I was lucky to have somebody to kind of mentor me, if you like, for 12 months. And then up to Newcastle, and the same again. We had Mick Wadsworth, we had John Carver there, helping me out and kind of educating me on the football side. And I was there, obviously, on the information technology side or the data side, to try and provide feedback on the information that was coming from the game.
And how was that like for a young buck going into a club where you've got seasoned pros in their own roles, etc., and you've got this young buck from Newcastle come along, and he wants to talk about technology, and he wants to have all these ideas and stuff like that. Were they warm to it at Middlesbrough or even Newcastle thereafter, matey?
Well, yeah. So it's. Nowadays, if we look at it nowadays, the clubs have analysts, the 23s have analysts, the academies have analysts, and by the time anybody reaches that first team environment, they're used to getting feedback on a video, DVD, they're getting some information on the wall in the dressing room, portfolios. In 98, 99, if you try to show something out of the video, it was just unheard of, So I quickly realized that, you need the coach's help here, because these are the guys who are the link between what I can provide with no football background to the guys who are going to give the information to the players, So it was a small steps, little pieces at a time, trying to align yourself with the players in a way that they can build up a little bit of trust with you, because I think sometimes you can be felt, well, I'm getting dug out here. I'm getting provided with examples of everything that I do wrong. And it's not about that. It shouldn't always be about that. It's about encouragement and feedback to the players to help develop them. And it just takes time. A lot easier now, I think, in the role because they're used to it. But back in '99, we're coming to Newcastle. We're trying to show Alan Shearer and Gary Speed some information, and it's just, you've got to be really careful, because it sometimes you got to tread carefully. But having the right manager and the right staff around definitely help. And like you said, I was fortunate enough to work with some great managers who've helped me, and all the way along through my career, took little bits from each manager that I've worked with. Some good, probably some bad as well, if I'm honest. Little things that I've learned from on the way through. So it's definitely been a challenging 20 years.
It sounds so interesting to me, because, as you mentioned, unless you're working in the football club as a football fan from the outside, you see 11 people come out. They've been training all week. You've got this ideology of who the manager should pick, blatant, based on performance or training, but you don't see all of the side that you just mentioned behind in terms of the data. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into what that kind of looks like, without giving away any secrets, but just kind of on a one-on-one basis? You mentioned Gary Speed and Alan Shearer back in the day, but even more now with the players now. What are you showing them? What are you showing them about their game and how they can improve? And how is that information being gathered to be able to enhance their own personal performance?
Well, I think it's important to know that every club has a different workflow, working with different systems and different softwares. My remits in the early days really were just looking at set pieces, because it would take me all day to go through a couple of games with a fast forward and take out the set pieces and take some notes. These days, everything's available digitally online. Companies like Opta and Y-Scout, we can get a hold of that information. But really, trying to find what I was looking at when I'm looking at set pieces in the opposition. Okay, we're looking at trends. An easy example would be looking at whether they have men defending both posts. Okay, whether they had one in the post, whether they had one in the hole. So making notes on that and presenting it to the coaching staff and the manager, not the players, because it would be up to the manager and the coaching staff to kind of choose the examples that they would want to see. So I remember I would sit down with Chris Hutton regularly with lots of information, and Chris would say, I want to show that, for example. Okay, so we would trim down a lot of the video, a lot of the examples from maybe 25, 30 minutes and get it down to about 7 or 8 minutes, where he would then present that to the players, So yeah, looking for strengths and weaknesses and things like that. But post game as well, there would be a game plan. There's always a game plan working for a manager, but what they try to do. So we would try and feedback information on whether we stuck to the game plan, whether we achieved what was necessary, etc., or not.
You touched upon it being sort of players that you come up against that you had to tread carefully. Did you find the same with some managers? Would you see some of the sort of older head managers being more reluctant to look at those sort of data analytics, or were they easier to deal with, or what's the?
I mean, it's very similar, really. So if you go back to the start, it's difficult. We have to data's. They don't know how to work with data, and they don't know what's important. They don't know what's not important. And even really, when I started to work with data myself, we started analysing that information to find out what was useful and what was not useful, what we can kind of park. So yeah, some managers a little bit harder, but some of the managers will give you free rein to kind of have a thought process and present back to him. And other managers knew exactly what they wanted, very specific. They've come from a background of working with data, so they know exactly what it is, and then being able to try and transfer that into the new club environment as well. So a mixture as well. Some very receptive, can see the value in it, and others a little bit unsure. And it's about trying to find a balance and when to give them some information to try and catch their ear, to try and get them to take note. Look, this is useful. And it's the same in the recruitment side, which I've done for the past sort of 10 years.
One of the managers that was kind of right at the beginning of all that was Sam Allardyce, Big Sam, and any club that he's gone to, even from Bolton and all the way through, everyone has always said how much he pays attention to detail on data analytics and set pieces and things like that as well. Was he at Newcastle when you was there? And did you find him any more different to any of the other managers? Was he more anal about certain things? And what was his style like?
So Sam came, there's a bit of a story on that. Sam came to Newcastle and pushed the analytics to the next level. There's no doubt about that. We had been working with one system in Newcastle, one system that I'd known, that I had been trained up on. Sam came with a different system. So what had happened was, I was working with Glenn Roeder was the manager at the time, and I had asked Glenn if I could have an extra few weeks off in the summer to go to Australia traveling. So he granted that. I was in Australia when Glenn lost his job and Sam came to Newcastle. So what had happened was they came back to Newcastle and all went on a pre-season tour, and I missed that. So I'd missed all of the chance to kind of understand what the new systems were, what the new processes were going to be. When I landed back, went into the club, and Sam said, "Look, I'm going to bring my staff with us because they know what I need." Okay, and I understand that in football, football can be brutal, and you need results and you need information really quickly, and these guys could do that. So the guys came from Bolton with Sam, and that was when I left. So I had probably about 3 months with Sam, learning a little bit about it, but it was never really going to happen whilst they were waiting for the guys to come over from. But yeah, Sam, fantastic with data. Definitely sees the value of it. He obviously had worked with people who could provide him some good information, and I think he's carried that throughout the rest of his career. And there's no doubt about it that there's definitely, you can find insight with data if you're looking in the right areas, for sure.
He's always been looking for little tweaks to everything you see in terms of sort of the fitness element with him, in terms of analytics. You always hear the stories of Big Sam sort of being at the forefront of that, and maybe a bit ahead of his time early doors. People might have caught up now, but yeah, you always hear that side of things. He then left. What are your memories from around that sort of time, mate? Because as always with Newcastle, that's a time that there's ups and downs all the way along. What are your memories around that sort of time?
So Glenn, before you get to that, Lee, because you mentioned something earlier on which I want to touch on, then you can go on to the question that Glenn's asked you. You said, like, to be able to give the data over to people like Alan Shearer and Gary Speed. So Alan Shearer being a legend, a living legend, still playing for the club, etc. How was that for you, firstly, to work with him? And the second part of that question is, you must have left some impression on that guy, because getting to that question that Glenn just asked you, because he came in after Sam, didn't he? And he handpicked you back into the club. So I'll let you take it from there, man.
Yeah, so the memories at the time. Obviously, when I left Newcastle, it was all I knew. I had come out of school and I had, like I say, my YTS at Middlesbrough, and that's what I had been taught. And I was a bit of a crossroads, and almost a little bit of a shocking thing. And what can I do now? If I wanted to stay in the northeast, we've got Middlesbrough, Sunderland. So if I wanted to stay in football, and again, it's at the time when everything's not online, we couldn't work from home at the time. So it was a difficult period for me. It was watching it from afar. It was bittersweet. Then I think Sam left. We had Joe Kinnear come in. Again, I wasn't at the club. Joe Kinnear had Kevin Keegan also. So I wasn't I was unfortunate to not be at the club when Kevin Keegan was there. But I can only imagine the environment being amazing when Kevin was there. I hear some great stories about him. So yeah, was away for that part. Joe left, he had some problems, and Alan Shearer came in to take over part of, to the end of the season. And what had happened in between that time is the lads who came in with Sam also left with Sam. So I think the club was now left with a big hole in terms of analysis. And from what I gather was when Alan came back, Alan was in with Ian Dowie. They had asked, look, they needed somebody to come in and do the work. Alan had asked what had happened to Lee, and he was told the situation. And then I was fortunate to get back in. And it was at that point I thought, look, I need to, when I took that job back, I need to knuckle down and start investing in myself, doing some CPD, learning more, not just kind of putting myself in the situation with one company. I need to kind of learn about all aspects of football. So from then, I've invested in myself and doing a little bit more CPD, working with the FA, etc. So it was when I got the phone call saying Alan wants you back. I mean, it was like winning the lottery. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it, and it's something that I'll always be thankful to Alan for. It was amazing. I was actually out on the drink with a few of my friends. I don't mind telling you, I was out on a Friday night and I got a phone call off the now managing director Lee Charnley and said, "Look, will you? Alan wants you to come back." And I thought it was a wind up. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, it didn't take me with 2 seconds. I just said, "Yeah, okay, no problem." But I knew that I had a lot of work to do. Absolutely had a lot of work to do. And you don't deserve. You shouldn't just get in there on name or who you know. You've got to work hard. And I wanted to prove that I did deserve that job, and that's what I think I ended up doing for the next 15 years.
So obviously that's when you started adding more feathers to your bow, as to say,
yeah, for sure.
With learning more about the recruitment side rather than just analysing the opposition and what they're doing and what. Yeah, no, of course, you need to be you've got to be on demand,
So I'm guessing that you stayed with him in the Championship then, obviously the following season.
So
What's the biggest difference? Yeah, I was just going to say, he obviously, unfortunately, and I still feel for him now, that last game of the season against Villa, Newcastle go down. A big club like Newcastle are in the Championship. What's the biggest difference that you see between working for a club in the Championship and in the Premier League? I know Newcastle were never a Championship club. Everyone looked at them as a Premier League club, but unfortunately, the league table don't lie. And when you're in that division, that's where you are. What were the biggest differences that you found, or did you notice that maybe that side of it was being less invested in, or was it a case of we need to get back in as quick as possible? Let's keep the old guard in and make it happen.
Yeah. I think it's always the way Newcastle is. It's always going to be, let's get back up as quick as we can and do what we need to do. But just in terms of your question, in terms of the main differences, particularly from where we were at Newcastle, rather than we weren't playing in Europe. So it's the demand on the squad and the players, because you've got Saturday, Tuesday games. So you're always working. So in terms of working in the Championship, we couldn't have one analyst. I would never be out the office. I'd be doing 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So one of the things that I said was, if I'm coming back, we need to have a department. We need to portion the workload and come up with a workflow where we can do it. So, and it's the same with the players. With me being an analyst in the early days of the data to even 2010, 2011. We now have guys who are analysts are working on the fitness side. Okay, we've got opposition analysts, we've got recruitment analysts. The roles are huge now, and it goes all the way down from now. We've got 23s and under 18s. So the analysis is absolutely huge in football now. It's interesting to see how it progresses, and it's also interesting to see how everybody's working slightly differently as well. There's no kind of one framework of how it seems to be, which is interesting. But yeah, just to circle back on your question, I think for me it would have to be the demand of the players and the staff as well, because you've got to remember the staff, they're away from the families, they're away there on the road, they're traveling. We've got the masseurs, we've got the physios. Okay, we've all got a part to play, and it takes its toll. And there's a lot of demand on everybody at a football club in the Championship.
And you really found that, towards from the time I've got to know you, Lee, you were working round the clock, mate, going into the training ground 7 o'clock in the morning, getting out 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, being there for the manager, being there for the recruitment people, being there for everyone. And, it was relentless, wasn't it?
And I think, it's a good, there's be a lot of people in a similar boat in football, but from that came a little bit about managing your time, I think sometimes it can be a thankless task being there. You can be there 24 hours a day just to do the job. And it's learning a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the workflow, but educating others, and say, look, we need time away from the office. We need time with our families. We need time to set back. Can we split that role into 2? Can we have a head of department and 3 below? So we've got the workflow ready so that when we do come into work, we're fresh. We're ready to go, and we're switched on, and that's so important, And for me, that was one of the things I was pushing. We don't want to drain our staff. Okay, the same way as we don't want to drain the conditioning of the players. We need everybody sharp, and trying to have that available is really important, to me.
Leah, I've got a question here from a Newcastle fan who wanted to get an answer. He just wanted to know, from your point of view or department, how much pressure did you feel under during the season, especially if Newcastle weren't necessarily having a great time? Was there a lot more pressure on the analytics to get it right? Why did we not pick up that they do have 2 defenders on the line and we've just scored, we've just conceded from a corner, or we haven't scored from a corner? Was that pressure there for you? Just put, in capital letters, he's just put back, behind the scenes kind of thing. From behind the scenes point of view, was there that pressure as well?
I think, you're always going to feel pressure in that, it's just the pressure is generally transferred, from above. But I don't mind the pressure to a certain extent, because, I'm a stickler for preparation. Can we do as much as we can to be prepared? Listen, analysts, players, managers, we all make mistakes in football, but can we learn from that? can we be better for the next time? Can we review what we've done and make ourselves accountable by measuring what we do? So I did feel the pressure, yes, but no, I would say no more than anybody else. I don't think it's certainly not up to me to find the way to win 3 points. But if you've got a team and you're part of a good team, we're all contributing. We all want to try and help. And that in itself, you want to strive to be the best. You want to strive to help and put a little bit of pressure on yourself as well as others is important, I think. But yeah, I do say that you've got to be kind of strong enough to handle the pressure. Particularly, one of the worst ones is half time. If you've got some clips that need to be shown up, there's some shouting going on, some lads are getting some strapping, some tapes on, and you've got a clip that the manager wants you to have up on the screen, and then you get the blue screen on your laptop. What are you going to do? That's what can we do about things like that? Things like that happen for sure. So can we have spares? Can we be ready? Can we have something like that to go? So learn from the pressure to try and kind of anticipate what's going to come. But there'll always be errors and mistakes in football, but we want to try and limit them as much as possible.
Lee, looking back at your timeline, mate, it looks as though you worked with or alongside a couple of sort of Newcastle legends, and I was really, really sort of interested in seeing what your thoughts were on those guys. You've got, I can see Freddy Shepherd potentially was at the club when you first joined, and then Bobby Robson, two absolute sort of legends at the club. First off, Freddy Shepherd, what's your thoughts on him, mate?
So I never met Freddy. He was the chairman at the time, and I was kind of a young lad, so never in those kind of circles, those kind of meetings. What I would say about Freddy Shepherd was obviously he was a Geordie and a fan of Newcastle, so he was always trying to give us an angle, give us an opportunity, and wanted to compete. Which is great. That's what the fans want from Newcastle. That's all fans demand the players, performance from the players. Newcastle are no different from that. But yeah, I didn't have any chance to have a one-to-one with Freddie, but yeah, I understood that he was a fan at heart and he wanted what's the best for the club, which is great.
Yeah.
So Bobby Robson
with
so he was fantastic. Again, I was 20, 21 or something, like around the place, and you can imagine sort of videos and data being very, very different, but he saw the value in it for sure. He really wanted to show examples of positivity and negativity in the game, about the game plan. Didn't have any one-to-ones with him, certainly had a couple of conversations backwards and forwards, but not in terms of education. That was be down to Mick Wadsworth and John Carver at the time, who were the coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, so privileged and lucky to be able to watch him work and speak in a room and give feedback. And when he had something to say and when he wanted to go through people, he could do that as well. He was a great arm around the shoulder, but also great at telling people when they weren't doing what they wanted, what it was required. But yeah.
And what do you think those two guys would be thinking? I know we've got to tread carefully. Be thinking of the current state of the club. What do you think that they would look on the club and how they're acting and trading and
well,
performing?
I've got to, I wear the cap. They were both aligned to Newcastle. Both had that background with Newcastle, that Geordie fans. So from that point of view, they'll, from the fans' point of view, they only want what would be the best for the club. I'm sure, being fans as well, working for the club. So yeah, I think that would be their mindset probably.
Yeah. How did you come to leaving the club eventually, like this time round, Lee?
Yes, well, so I think it was in 2016, around about when I met Pre, actually. I did a course with the FA.
It was Pre's fault.
Pre's fault, yeah.
He has that effect on you. I had everything before I met him.
We had to showcase a little bit about kind of what we were doing at the club, the systems that we were working with, what we had built, what to talk about. And I was getting some great feedback, It was actually Steve McLaren who encouraged me to go on the FA course when he saw what we were doing at Newcastle. And I just thought, I mean, one of my primary drivers is being able to help others, I mean, again, Pre will tell you, I've always been at the end of the phone for pre if he needed advice or he needed some information on what he was doing in terms of the agency. So I just thought, this is, I've got a chance to help others in what I do, to provide advice, and the feedback that I got from others, I just thought, if I don't leave, albeit fan of Newcastle, I will always wonder what if.
Yep.
So I take, obviously it's a chance for sure, but it's just interesting to be able to say, look, there's more than one way of working, and there's more than one group of people that you're able to help. And since I've left, the interest, particularly from an educational side, okay, there's so many people want to know, how do you do this? What is it that clubs are looking for? How do we approach working in a football club environment? So I didn't expect to be going down the education side, but I think the year's pandemic and a lot of people being at home looking to upskill, looking to do courses, there's been so much interest in what I'm doing. So that's what I'm geared up at doing now. Teaching, helping others, supporting agencies, supporting clubs in terms of working with what they've got, or if they don't have anything and they want to start, being able to give them best practice in the theory of what goes on in a football club. And it's so rewarding to get the feedback from others and the positive from others. It's exciting times for sure.
And I will take a little bit of blame on that, because I think you needed to take that leap of faith, because what you've done and what you believed in was incredible, and you had to take that leap of faith and believe that outside Newcastle, for argument's sake, you can be appreciated and you can be very successful. Yeah. And we're in a crazy world at the moment. No one expected, no one knew what was coming with 2020 and the pandemic, and how the demographic of football and the finances that we thought was a tap that will never, an endless tap, or whatever the saying is, but saying that, you've done it, and I think, I'll say it, but there was times, I know, when there was certain players that you had put forward and etc. to the management team and stuff, and they didn't go on those, and you can see, we're not going to mention them, I'm not going to say who it was, etc. But how successful they were at other clubs. That happens though.
Of course, it's normal part of the process. There's always a reason behind signing a player. It's not always the same reason, I always liken it to, it's almost like fantasy football. Well, you've got X amount to spend. Well, you have to free up some space here. We have to put some space in here. We're strong in this area. We don't need that one, even though there's a player available. So there's always a thought process going on behind the scenes, and it's not always the same. It's really, forget the, pardon the pun. It's not black and white. It really is quite grey, when it comes to recruitment.
Yeah,
did you find you had a difference in mentality with the current setup there compared to previous years, or was it not? Was it on an individual basis, or?
So I think probably what's happened is, since 2011, my experiences, my confidence, and my knowledge bases grew. So it's kind of changed as the managers have changed as well. So with each manager coming, I've kind of brought something new to the table than what I did from the previous manager. Chris Hutton was kind of the first one. He put me with Graham Carr, and kind of used to working together. Now Graham Carr's, old school for sure, but I learned so much from Graham, which puts me in the next for the next manager, or for the next group of staff. Rafa as well. We talk about Sam being approached with data. Rafa left no stone unturned from everything. So again, right the way back to the start of the conversation, where we talk about always learning. Took loads from Rafa as well, and it was at that point when Rafa kind of left. Thought, look, I've got a lot of tools here in my toolkit now, which I feel confident enough to be able to help others, rather than just the one platform, the one club, if you like. So
Rafa proper put you on a pedestal as well, and he really saw the value on what you bring to the table. And we had those conversations when the time Townsend had signed for Newcastle and stuff like that. Your role really stepped up then as well.
Rafa's, because he had been working with data, so he has the background of coming with that background of data, so he can see the value in it. So the fact that there's somebody at the club who can work with it and provide information is a big plus. So, it's not just me, it's the fact that the club had somebody in place who could work with the data and could help him provide with what he needed, provide the insight, but also find players based on what he wanted. Can we use some frameworks of some KPIs or key performance indicators from what Rafa wants from a player to kind of strip down from 150,000 players on a database to a manageable data set? Then we can go out and scout, and I have to point out, guys, that it should never be only about data. Sign the player on data. It's the same way as we shouldn't sign a player only on video. It's a balance from both. Data can be at the starting point of the process, but it can also be at the end of the process when you're providing information on the diligence that you've done. Have we done what we need to do before we bring this player in? Okay, so data comes in at all parts of the.
I remember Harry Redknapp used to sign everyone on videotapes when he was at West Ham. Any foreigner that used to come in, he'd be like, "Yeah, I've seen a video of him. Looks half decent."
I think Sandro was signed on video as well. He'd never been to the UK ever before.
Exactly. Lee, I've got
I'm sure it happens, and I think some clubs, some people will have their fingers burned, but some people will have success on that. But it's like we can cut a video up, we can make data say what we want. So this is why we need to be really careful and understand what it is on the video, what it is on the data. For me, always the eyes need to be on the player. And that wasn't me. That would be the chief scout, the head of recruitment, the scouting team, who have to go and make those decisions. Okay, and I'm dealing with all that information as it comes back into Newcastle.
Sorry, Serkan, just relevant to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We worked with Newcastle for the time that from Lee was being there, and Newcastle as a particular club have like a traffic light system when they're scouting a player, and according to performances where I've sat around a table with a player and the head of recruitment, and they're trying to sell the club to the player. It was incredible how they presented it, and they told the player and his parents that we've watched the player 15 to 20 times, X amount of times live, X amount of times on Y-Scout, X amount of times on TV, and we give you a red, amber, and green. So again, was that something that was brought in and was
so that's a credit to the staff there that we've got. Let's say Newcastle have everybody within the recruitment department has a role to play at Newcastle United, and Steve Nixon, who's heading it up all there. Steve's a great guy. He's a hard worker. He works tirelessly on diligence, and he brings something to the recruitment department, and that's why he's the head of recruitment. He does that. But again, it's about bringing what I call aggregating all of these data sets together into a portfolio, whether you present into the CEO, the owner, whether you present into the player, whether you present to the manager. Having that information, having what I call a data controller, somebody who can bring all of these data sets in and then display it is really important, I think.
It was important. It was so fascinating to see from that side, that point of view, that you've got somebody, and it was Steve Nixon that was in that meeting with us, and that comes down to a different topic. Football has the football side of things, everything that you guys do from yourself and Steve and all the heads of recruitment and director of footballs. Director of football, a little bit, he's on both sides, but you've got the football side of it. But then you have the business side of football. The business side of football is completely different, and what they see and what they envisage to be part of a transfer and what's happening, and this is really what fans will never see and have an understanding of unless they're involved within the industry. And again, a club like Newcastle, they know where they belong within the food chain, and they're very clear to actually show that. And that day when we had that presentation, at the end of it, they had there's a brilliant presentation it took about an hour and a half, and during that time you had there's a lot of translation going on because the boys and the family didn't really speak much English, etc. The boy did, but the family didn't, and they had to be explained to everyone, so it took a little bit longer. But then at the end of it, right to put the icing on the cake, there was a picture of Musa Sissoko on one side and Gini Wijnaldum on the other side, both in their respective kits of Tottenham and Liverpool, showing that both of these boys come through the Newcastle route, and they're both playing in the biggest game in the world, the Champions League final. And they understand that this is a stepping stone, and it's about, and again, like this boy was coming from a super club, and even players need to understand that being at a super club, it doesn't matter what you do. Sometimes you're just not going to get the opportunities. Doesn't matter how well you perform, whatever happens, because what's going to happen is the manager's just going to bring in the bigger name back in, regardless of what you've done in training or playing or whatever it was. So the player then understands that they've got to take a couple of steps down to progress again. And it's really important to understand, like clubs like Leicester City, Newcastle, Aston Villa, the West Hams of the world, etc. They know their place. Talking about a club that no, look, they do know because they know they've got to set a player at a right time. Because then when it comes to the recruitment side of things, as an agent myself, and if I had to bring my player, would I be reluctant to bring a player to a club like Tottenham where maybe there'll be a block on the player moving on because you've got to deal with the demographic of how the chairman runs the club there, whereas you've got these other clubs where they have to sell the player, they have to sell the player because that makes it a smoother transition to get these players that are just under that level, because they know that if they perform, they get moved on to that next super club or whatever it may be.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, Priya. I think it's really important that when any club tries to sign a player, the player can see the pathway. He can understand what the process is, and maybe there's not a block on him, or he understands where he fits into that team, particularly if you're trying to sign a big player. They have to understand where the club see him, and if a club can present that information to the player, then all the better for it. I think clarity and transparency has a big part to play in football, even though it's not so much as it's not always the case there. But I think it has a big part to play in football, and we need to see more of it. If I'm honest, transparency and clarity in the game.
I think most Newcastle fans listening or watching will agree with me. But whoever Joe Linton's agent is, he needs to he needs to be looked at. Anyone who's looking to get into a club, if you can get Joe Linton as your agent, you've got a good chance by the sounds of it.
A good chance. Yeah, I don't know who it is. I don't know who his agent is.
Moving on. Talking about the fans of Newcastle, we've had a question for you, Lee. At Newcastle United Times on Instagram, asked a question saying, best talent you've ever witnessed. Literally as blunt as that. Best talent you've ever witnessed.
Best talent I've ever witnessed. Well, from a recruitment point of view,
Newcastle related. I'm assuming Newcastle related. From
a recruitment point of view, it's a bit of a bittersweet one. I really like Florian Thauvin. Didn't do it for whatever the reason will be and remain at Newcastle. But I remember I saw him come off the bench for Bastia, just changed the game and just absolutely blew me away. Just a young lad at the time, Yep. I remember getting on the phone to Graham saying, Graham, wow. Graham says, oh, Lee, I know all about him. Don't worry about that. I know all about him. I was okay, job done. But yeah, this boy was such talent. Hatem Ben Arfa as well. Things in training, just so easy and comfortable for him. It's just, we didn't get a chance to go out and watch training very often because we were in the office doing our work, but we'd sneak out and peek around and watch him in training. You just think, wow, talking about it now, the hairs come up on the back of my neck. You just get seeing talent like that is just, I feel a privilege to be able to see them, in training, and it's just second nature. I always remember the Maradona Life is Life warm up. You just think, we're going to watch the players how they commit in training in the warm ups. And then you watch Maradona go and do that, but it's just raw talent. Unbelievable. Great to see as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, with your company, Spotlight ID Limited, we thought we'd put a little spotlight on some of the transfers, good, bad and ugly, that have happened with Newcastle. Whether or not you want to comment on some of them, I don't know. But
listen, I'll always give you an honest opinion on where I can. That's what I am.
If you need to swipe left or swipe right, just let us know.
Who's feeling more on a fan's point of view as opposed to your position, really? There's been quite a few, as we alluded to. We're starting off with someone who was really highly thought of at the time of signing, and this just petered out. And I think he's only really young still. One, Stephen Ireland,
wow.
signed for Newcastle on loan for 4 months. I think he only played once in 4 months and then went back. Can you remember him signing?
I remember him being at the club. I don't remember anything about that transfer whatsoever. I saw him a few times when I managed to get out of the bunker, when I managed to get out of the office.
Mate. Convenient that, Lee.
Yeah, listen, that's the truth. That's the truth. I saw him around the place. Quiet lad. That's all I remember.
He loves his liked his clothing and his cars from memory. I think that was the.
Yeah, apparently I didn't see none of that though. Didn't see none of that as the training ground.
No.
Next.
Well, on to the next one. Well, you sold a 35 million. Not you personally, but you sold a 35 million pound striker in Andy Carroll and decided to replace him with this guy. Shefty Kuchi.
Shefty Kuchi, yeah. What can I say about that one? I think it's been well documented that it was a shock. I think it was a shock to everybody the day that Andy went. And it was on transfer deadline day. And then after that, it's a case of, without going too much into it, who's available on a free. But in Shefty's defence, what an athlete, what a trainer, and what a professional around the place.
He's actually a great man.
I've
dealt with him when he was coaching out in Finland. So
yeah,
mate, really, really good guy. So
yeah,
be nice to him.
Yeah, no. He just wasn't. He wasn't that type of striker, was he? He wasn't a replacement for Andy Carroll.
No, for sure. And I don't think it would ever be. If one goes out, one comes in. It's not necessarily a like for sure. Come on.
What are your memories of Andy Carroll from that stage in terms of the analytics? Because at one point he was like the second coming of Shearer almost. He'd just come off the back of that season in the Championship that he absolutely smashed it. Started off well in the Premier League and then got that transfer. Was the feeling around the club that he is the second coming of Shearer, that sort of thing, or?
Well, there was definitely. I mean, he had a presence around the place as much as he had a presence on the pitch. Big lad. Left-footed, caused all sorts of problems on the pitch for the opposition. I wouldn't say he's the second coming. No disrespect to Andy, but how can he match challenge? You know what I mean? This is totally. Listen, he got me back. I'll always love him for that. That's
I think with Andy, he was one of your own. So every Newcastle fan wanted him to do well, and he had a presence, and he did do very well, bar a few injuries and stuff. But he's a Newcastle boy through and through. He loves that club. So as a fan, you're going to want him to do well.
Talking about strikers and coming through the system, and we talked about something earlier on, talent, but then there's also hard work that comes into it to nurture your talent and be the best you can be. And you had a young man called Niall Ranger there that really came on, was a big blast on the scene. Came into the Premier League scoring goals, and I've spoken to yourself, I've spoken to other people about him as well, and he could have had anything he wanted. That boy had everything. And what was it like with him, like when he first came onto the scene, like coming from the youth and going to the first team, mate?
Yeah, so again, in and around the dressing room, quite quiet, a little bit humble. I don't think, from the outside, what you hear on the outside certainly wasn't what kind of came through to me. Had a nice enough conversations with him, had some chats with him on the team bus traveling. He was okay. I guess like many of these prospects who come through, it's always disappointing if they don't make it. For anybody come through, I always want to see lads do well at Newcastle. I never want to see anybody fail or not achieve it. So that's happened time and time again at many clubs, and it will happen time and time again all throughout the industry. So it's a shame, but that's unfortunately that's football, and we go to the next one.
Yeah, on to the next one is along the same sort of vein, but he's actually kicked on from where he was with Newcastle. He's he's even being looked at for England. So some people say, and you mentioned Graham Carr earlier. After researching, it looked like Graham Carr pulled in a few strings at Northampton. And this player come along, Ivan Toney. I think I've blocked you out there a little bit, mate. Apologies.
You have, that's all right. He's better looking than me.
So Ivan Toney has since left. He was signed for 250,000 from what I can see. Since left and sold under. Yeah, Turk, can you put your head there? You can sign for Newcastle as well, mate.
He looks like Scott Parker when he does that.
I've been called that a few times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is one that got away by the looks of it. Rafa come in, and then it looks like he got sold to Peterborough for 180,000, seemingly now worth a lot more money. Can you remember much about Ivan Toney from this sort of time, mate?
So he went out on loan. I saw him in and around the training ground a few times. Didn't have a chance to have a chat with Ivan. At this point, I'm a little bit more disassociated from the players directly, because I'm not working as a performance analyst. You're working in recruitment. What I would say is, in terms of it, there's always a succession plan at the club, so they have an idea of what's going on. It's not to say that they didn't fancy him as a player, It's just, it wasn't a fit at that time,
Yeah.
And you use Ivan as an example. There'll be loads of examples where they go. And that's not to say that they're not good enough. It's just not a right fit for the succession plan at that time.
No, I mean it's easy to say now, but could you imagine Ivan Toney in that team now? I think he would probably be the difference between you had Callum Wilson with an injury at one stage, and there pretty much wasn't anything else up front. And I think, but things happen. It's part of life, isn't it? Early 2000s. Not sure whereabouts you was at this sort of time, but you was a Newcastle fan. I think Newcastle spent around 23 million on two central defenders one summer. One was Jonathan Woodgate. The other one was Titus Bramble. Seemingly signed from Ipswich. Seemingly had everything to be one of the best sort of central defenders in England. I loved playing against him because you could get at him. Not that I played physically against him, but as a Tottenham fan. What were your memories from this sort of time, mate?
So, yeah, I mean, 2000, I was working, I was really young and raw. What I would say about that, was he maybe England under 21 at the time?
He was at the time, yeah.
Ipswich were producing some great players. We obviously took Kieran Dyer at the time, not too long earlier. So it's about that, looking at around what's available at the market at the time. English got a pedigree coming through. So I mean, I don't know what the scouting thoughts were around him, but I can see something similar even these days. There'll be a lot of scouts looking at England under 21 centre backs.
But he had all the attributes. He had all the attributes, didn't he? He was physical. He had pace. He was good in the air. And
nice lad as well, from what I remember.
Yeah, no. And he was good in that Ipswich team, mate. That Ipswich team were ripping it up, weren't they? They came up and they finished 5th from memory, I believe.
Yeah, that Marcus Stewart, Jamie Scowcroft, that sort of team. They did really well one season. Got relegated the following season from memory. Richard Bright in goal as well.
I mean, it makes sense for me to be looking at players like that.
Sorry,
guys.
You had like Finidi George, didn't you? You had Finidi George in that team.
Finidi George, yeah.
Yeah,
it's about fit, isn't it? Newcastle was a big step up from Ipswich, and you've got to come in there and you've got the right manager, and also the team's got to be doing well. I think the problem is when you got young players like this, and if you come into a struggling team, you're never gonna do well. So being in a team that is doing well, he might have had a different career there, but it's a shame because maybe it was a move too soon for him.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, again, it's always, for a player to do really well, it's normally the stars have to align. There's so many things that go on in and around football, in the game, out the game, and for them to go. So to get success is fantastic as well. But, we can't have full-on success from all the signings. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. You look at any club, that's just what happens.
There was a weird scenario in 2010. I don't like swearing too much on the show, and there's a player who is a swear word to me and all Tottenham fans. But one Sol Campbell joined the club in 2010. Can you remember much from this transfer? Because at this time he had left Arsenal, joined I think it was Notts County, Portsmouth, joined Arsenal again, and then went on to sign for Newcastle. Any memories from this sort of time, mate?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely. I remember him being in and around. He had a presence. Had a lovely Ferrari. as well. So you had a nice presence in the car park. I'm trying to think of the link there. Maybe Chris Hutton was at Spurs with him.
Yeah, of course he was. He was the assistant manager there for years, isn't it? He was there for a long time, Chris Hutton.
Yeah. So he was again. Had a couple of conversations with Saul. Didn't get to do a lot of work with him at all, but I can't answer any questions about the recruitment side of that one. I'm afraid I wasn't involved in it. Just started the transition to work with Graham Carr.
Let's move him off the screen. I don't want him on there too much more. He's not a big fan. So how did you get working with Pre?
So how did I get work with Pre? How did I meet you? Met you through Richard, didn't I?
For Richard Trafford. So somebody that's been quite influential, probably in both of our lives, really.
So,
with when Richard brought Y Scout to the UK and he was working as their sole representative and bringing it in. I think he explained to me when he came on, there was about 4 or 5 clubs in the UK that were using Y Scout. And then by the time he had done his magic, I think there was probably 4 or 5 clubs throughout the whole football pyramids that weren't using it. So obviously for somebody like yourself, Richard must have been like a godsend, right? He was for me as well, because he's, he came to see me. I was introduced to him by another mutual friend, Nicola, and he came to sell me the the platform and present it to me, etc. And we just kicked it off so well, man, because he's such a good energy, such a good guy. And he just goes, mate, you know what, Priyesh, I like you. I think you're going to do really well in this industry. And he just started opening up his phone book and his contact base. And, I will forever be appreciative to all the people that he's introduced me to the game of football. And that's how we met. And then where we really bonded, shall we say, was in Italy, wasn't it? At the Y Scout in Chiavari. And one memory that will always stick with me is we went for a walk. Was it the day that we arrived? Wasn't it? The day we arrived, it was probably before the first seminar and stuff. And we went for a walk, and we see these little toy cars. And you were like, mate, Priyesh, please look, I ain't got my phone on me, some charge or something. Please get a picture of me. Get a picture of it and send it to me later.
Yeah.
All that does is remind you of your father, and from there.
For sure. Times in Italy, it was strange to see this almost the same kind of toys. And I thought, I want to share that with my kids. I remember that clearly. Just to say, look, these were the things that we were on. It's still there. So Rafa had asked Y Scout. We used to do, well, they still do. I think they do forums where the agents can meet the clubs, where you get a chance to talk about what you're looking for. So the press will come to me and say, what positions do the club need? Okay, and go back and do his research. So that's when, we sat, and I think we had a good few hours that day, and then the nighttime, a few beers at the nighttime as well, just talking and bonding. So that's how I knew Pre, and it's about kind of just, I think what kind of aligned with Priyesh is just his kind of philosophy, his belief in kind of his professionalism. His outlook on life as well, very similar to myself, and I think that's why we've just kind of backwards and forwards and helping each other out and kind of chewing the fat. And I can pick up the phone and say, Pre, what do you think about this? Obviously, Pre's kind of from a business point of view as well, fantastic guy, so he's always been at the end of the phone for me, and likewise for me to Pre, So there you go.
Lovely. Well, I have really thoroughly enjoyed having you on, mate. Before we go, can we have your final thoughts on how you think you're going to end up this season with a relegation potential, or what are your thoughts on how the club's going to go?
Safe.
You think so?
Well,
that's confident. That's a confident statement.
Hold on. Is that a safe answer, or do you mean safe?
Listen, always be a Newcastle fan. Want them to be in the Premier League. Has to be safe. That has to be the answer.
Cool.
Yeah. Remain positive, mate.
Yes, remain positive. Keep it going.
Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us today.
No problem. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Best of luck with it. All the podcasts as well. I shall be following from afar. tuning in every Saturday. I've enjoyed
Appreciate
it.
that. And we'll definitely follow on your career as well. So good luck.
No worries. Thanks very much,
Amazing,
guys.
mate. Thank you very much. Cheers. All the best. Bye.
Lee, I'll catch up with you later, mate.
He's gone.
Well, there you go. What a great insight.
How was that for you, boys? How was that insight for you into transfers and analysis and how things work?
Just in general, for the viewers, for people listening and watching, it's always good to have someone in behind the scenes who can give you that insight. And I think it was a very honest chat. You can see that he's a big Newcastle fan, so I think probably leaving there and coming back and getting that phone call from Alan Shearer must have been amazing for him. I know what I would have felt like if that was me, but he clearly is very good at what he does, and long may that continue. I look forward to seeing him in other clubs and doing what he does.
Exactly. I mean, we've started your own company and whatnot, and taking that jump. You if you can't gamble on yourself, who can you gamble on? I mean, that's the real be all and end all. And from all those years, all those connections, if someone like Lee isn't going to be able to make a go of it, then I don't think there's much hope for any of us. So, good luck to him. Good luck to him. What's your thoughts, mate? Pre?
Sorry, mate.
What's your thoughts?
No, look, I think Lee's going to have a successful career if he carries on working for himself, working with clubs as a consultant or with agents like myself, where we can buy data off him and go and target players in different countries, etc. And hopefully within the next year or so, we can actually talk about, this is the whole reason why we started the show, right? To talk about football as a fan, but also to bring our insight from One Click Sports Management as what we do and the people that we work with and stuff like that. And hopefully there'll be a player that me and Lee have worked on together to move to a club, be it in the MLS, be it here in England, be it somewhere in Europe, that we can come back and talk about and hopefully get Lee back on and we can tell you guys all about it.
Look forward
Talking
to
about MLS, that tees us up nicely. Next week's guest, former Tottenham coach, worked alongside Jose Mourinho as well at Real Madrid, former New Zealand international manager, now the current USA under-20s coach. Anthony Hudson is our guest. Some brilliant insight there, worked alongside Harry Redknapp, also owns a charity with Harry Redknapp as well. So that'll be an amazing show. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll be marketing that as much as anything. So all good this weekend, though, guys. International weekend. We've got some big fixtures coming up. We've got some not so big fixtures coming up. I think Erling Haaland's got some views on it as well. What's your thoughts in regards to this weekend's fixtures, guys?
Well, look, I think international football's come at a good time. It's nice sometimes just to have a little break. I've never been a big fan of it. I love the big tournaments, but international week normally drags on. But I think it's probably come at a good time for everyone. But I think that there's already been some good games, and I think that it's just all good preparation, ready for the tournament in a few months' time. So yeah, there's, like you said, the fixtures. There's a few here and there, but there's a few that stand out for me. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch the Turkey Holland game the other night?
Yeah, I did actually. Look, for me personally, obviously there's a little bit of avid interest in there, and I think that Netherlands are nowhere near the club or the country they were in terms of players. I was looking at their starting lineup, and I was like, "There's no one here that I'm really worried about." And Turkey have got a real good kind of squad now, with a combination of young players and experience. So it finished 4-2. And it could have been anything, to be honest with you, but they went 3-0 up and it finished 4-2. So yeah, it's another good game from them as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many games. If I'm honest with you, it's tough to go through all of them. There's so many games over the next two days. I think it's best if we just sort of concentrate on the England game and potentially some of the others. I mean, you've got there.
No. I'm interested in the Montenegro and Gibraltar game that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to ask Erling Haaland what he thinks of this game?
What do you think of this game, Erling? See the video.
What a shit game.
I thought Just leave you there awkwardly.
Yeah, you did, mate.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a
No, but
enticing.
you say that, but then like a lot of these clubs and stuff like that, they're watching out for some of these players that are playing in these games, etc., to see how they're doing on that international stage. It might not be the Premier League clubs; it could be the Championship club. You know, we're just talking about clubs in general. So international week still is, you know, from a when you're working within the industry, people are interested in how they're performing for their national teams. It could be one of the, say, for example, you see that fixture there with Kazakhstan and France, that's, somebody in that Kazakhstani team could do some madness in that game, and, there'll be somebody watching that will maybe go and pick him up from there or something like that. So there's always a chance of something like that happening,
Another thing I wanted to point out, there was the Wales versus Belgium game. Turk, do you think that it's possible that they've actually done an England with Belgium and missed out on their golden generation? I mean, you've got Hazard there with a substantial amount of injuries on a regular. You've got...
Sorry, guys, I'll be back in 1 second, yeah? I'll be back in 1 second.
Go on, mate, no problem at all. Yeah, I mean, that Belgium team from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't think that's the same team anymore. Are you thinking along the same lines as me?
Yeah, I think you're touching on something there. I mean, the thing is, Hazard has not been the Hazard that we're aware of. They've got some quality players still. I was looking at that squad, and I thought, look, for me, going into this tournament now, it's got to be Belgium's time. I know that there's still the Frances and the Portugals. These are teams that have got really strong, squads. I include England in that as well. I don't think it's necessarily they've missed out. I think it's more of a case of the tournament being cancelled maybe last year has probably just highlighted the fact that it's come around this year, and some of those young players have developed with other clubs in the Premier League as well. I mean, there's some of the players that I didn't even realise they were playing for Belgium, and they've got a real good chance this summer. However, to answer your question properly as well, if they don't have a really good tournament this year, then that question has to be one of the ones that needs to be answered. Having said that, with having the tournament again next year, they've got 2 years now back to back to really do something. So I like the way they're looking. It's just a case of, have they got it at tournament level? Can they do it at tournament level? Because there was the same with England. England used to fly through the groups, but when it comes to the tournaments, we know where we used to come to, mostly quarters and the odd semi. But I think Belgium have got a good chance of getting up there. But there's some good teams and good teams.
Yeah, I think it's super important for them this time around. I think you can see sort of you got Lukaku coming into the prime of his career. You got Hazard, as I said, keeps on getting injured. You got a few other players that are aging. You've got Vertonghen, who's not the same player. You got Alderweireld, who's not the same player. The defence isn't the company Alderweireld, Vertonghen solidity that you once had. You've still got a good core.
Who did they have in defence against Wales the other day, mate? They had Vermaelen in the middle, Vertonghen on the left, and Alderweireld on the right, mate. I didn't even know Vermaelen still played.
Vertonghen's not getting in that Benfica team. Exactly. It's not the same. You've got the young guy, the name escapes me, who's a centre-back at Celtic.
Jason
Denayer as well. I got a bit emotional there by punching the computer. But, the defence is shaky for me, and as I say, that's why I'm saying in front
of them. You've got your Kevin De Bruyne, mate. You've got the Kevin De Bruynes, you've got the Thorgan Hazard. You've got who's the boy at Napoli's mind?
You got
the
Mertens is 32, 33 now. He's still a great player, but I think he probably is his last.
Yeah, but I mean, you've still got Telemans as well, Yuri Telemans as well from Leicester. And then Donker's not a bad player as well. He's in and around that squad. But Axel Witsel. So they've got some good players there. It's just a case of
great name, isn't it?
Do they click? I met him actually in Marbella.
I bet you did, mate.
Yeah, had a good night. He actually invited us onto his little table and looked after us. Yeah, he was a really, really nice guy. This is before he was still at Anderlecht, I think.
Oh,
And
right. This is before St. Petersburg.
Yeah, before that. Yeah, this was he was at Anderlecht. He was
China
with
and stuff like that.
he was with what's his name? The guy whose name escapes me right now. Who had a little spell at Burnley. Stefan Defoe.
Yeah, the midfield player.
Yeah, midfielder. He was a great little player. Got injured.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he was with him, and he was also with Dalman, Stefan Dalman, and they invited us onto their table. Me and a good friend of mine, Simon Felstein, who's works at Tottenham Hotspur, and we had a good night. So thank you, Axel. I'm sure you're listening.
Yeah, he's but Axel Witzel's another aging player.
Yeah,
he's in his early 30s now. This is why I'm saying I really do.
He's doing well at Dortmund, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. He's earned his money out in China or wherever he was, but and he's come back and he's doing well again. Well, guys, I've really enjoyed that. As I did allude to earlier, we've got an amazing guest next week. Keep your eyes peeled, keep them open, keep watching. 10 a.m. next week for another episode. Great episode, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Keep liking, keep sharing.